Evan is here.
Baruch Hashem.
Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi, Kalayim, Perek Daled, Halacha Beis. We are going to be learning today Daf Lamed Tes, but we left off on Daf Lamed Ches, Amud Beis, 4 lines before the bottom of the Amud. Rabbi Yoina Amar Rabbi Yoshia, Rabbi Yoina Amar that Rabbi Yoshia boy. So let's quickly review. First of all, just to clarify, I don't know if the question went up on which device, but when Rabbi Chagai quoted a Mishnah in Eruvin Daf Tes Zayin Amud Beis regarding how to make an area into a Reshus HaYachid when all you have are 4 poles and you have strings. And the Mishnah says that as long as you put each string within 3 tfachim of, let's go, if we're going Milmata Lamaila, the first one within less than 3 tfachim from the ground. The second string goes higher, but not 3 tfachim, less than 3 tfachim. And the third one goes nachamo, less than 3 tfachim. You'll sum total it into 10 tfachim, and that will give you a halachic mechitza or mechitzois that is needed encircling the area in it, which there you may carry on Shabbos. Now, when we were learning this, people do this when they build a sukkah, we said, because sometimes the tarps are not that solid. But people that use strings to make their sukkah, lachatchila, they use 4 strings because the cheshbon doesn't work, right? That's what we were, that we left off on that question Friday. And it must be, Chevre, that when the Mishnah is dafka speaking about 3 strings, every string or every rope in itself has a certain thickness, height. And then it's going to work, because if you have at least, when you add up all of the 3 that the Mishnah speaks about, if you're going to have, let's say, a tafach and a half, then from the ground until the top of the 3rd top rope, you'll have 10 tfach. Okay, now, what are we talking about? So Rabbi Chagai brought a raya from that Mishnah. In other words, a person has a minimal amount of equipment. If one, for Hilchas Shabbos, would have been allowed to use a Tzuras HaPesach that only demands 1 rope on top of the vertical beams to create a halachic mechitza, if that would be valid even if the vertical poles are more than 10 amos apart, then why would the Mishnah go ahead and give us the solution, which appears to be the minimal solution? Right? The least effort for the solution, which is the 3 ropes, when the Mishnah could have given a better solution, which would have demanded even less rope. That was the raya that Rabbi Chagai brought to Reish Lakish, who argues with Rabbi Yoina. Again, Reish Lakish holds that for Hilchas Shabbos, Tzuras HaPesach will not work if it's more than 10 amos. So we're going to continue today's shir by going more in clarifying the proof of Reb Chagai, clarifying therefore more the shita of Reish Lakish b'negeya concerning Shabbos. Now, concerning Kalayim, no one argued. Kalayim, for sure, the heter of using a Tzuras HaPesach that we learned in the last year, which will affect the mechitza, which will allow you to plant vines up until one side of the Tzuras HaPesach. And it will allow you to plant any other plant immediately on the other side of the Tzuras HaPesach, is even if the poles of the Tzuras HaPesach are more than 10 amos apart. For Kalayim, for sure. The machlekes was whether Kalayim is bound by the limitations of Shabbos. L'Reish Lakish, Shabbos has that limitation. And then and Rabbi Yoina doesn't hold of that. Okay. Now we're going to have today another machlekes between Reish Lakish and Yosi regarding the maximum height of the side vertical poles for the Tzuras HaPesach. Ashgacha Pratis, we are learning this just a few days before Hanukkah, and we know, I know it's for Eruvin, it's not only for Hanukkah, but there's a din, right, B'negei Hanukkah, that you may not place your menorah above 20 amos above the ground. Question will be, what would happen if the vertical poles are beyond 20 amos? That will be another discussion that we're having today. And finally, the third detail that we'll have today concerning the rules of Tzuras HaPesach is huge. And that is, how is one to look at the Tzuras HaPesach? And let me quote the words that we'll learn. And those words are Ein Soif Tikra Matzil Mishum Peya. The word Peya means Tzuras HaPesach in our sugya of Kalayim. If you have a roof, even though the edge of the roof is all the way at the end of the two poles, that will never form a Tzuras HaPesach. Amazing. In other words, when you look at a Tzuras HaPesach, the top beam must be intended, when it's placed there, to outline the sides and not to be a roof. I'll repeat those words when we learn the sugya inside. This is a big thing, even though many of us learned Eruvin and we learned Shabbos and we learned Sukkah, we learned these dinim in the Bavli, but this is a Gavalik, at least in my memory, this is a big rule that Ein Soif Tikra Matzil Mishum Peya, which, by the way, we'll explain when it comes to Sukkahs. Why do you have to build walls? Why do you have to build walls? You're putting schach. Schach goes from one end to the other. Why don't we use the outermost bamboo beam or part of your mat or whatever else you have there as the top, the crossbar, and then you don't have to build walls at all. First of all, when it comes to a sukkah, you have to build the walls before you put the schach. But it's more than that. That will not be valid because of this rule that Ein Soif Tikra Matzil Mishum Peya. Now, we will actually, the Gemara today will connect Tzuras HaPesach to explicit din in Hilchos Sukkah, which will be great. We're going to have a din of Rabbi Abohu, which is a Chumra Dikadin, that says, all of this discussion, he calls it a Masa Umatin. In the Bavli, it's called a Shakla Vataria. In Torah, is beautiful. Bottom line, says Rabbi Abohu, Halacha L'maaseh, one cannot rely on Tzuras HaPesach when it comes to Hilchos Shabbos. Others will argue with Rabbi Abohu, but that's a very big statement. And God willing, we'll be able to get far enough in the Flamatesam base when the Gemara is going to bring a Braisa that's going to return to the Halacha base, to the Mishnah that we are all focusing on, which are general rules regarding mechitzas, right? If you have beams and you have breaches in the wall under 3 tfachim, with 3 tfachim up until 10 ames, more than 10 ames, oimid menuba al paretz, paretz menuba al ha'oimid. We're going to have a Braisa that actually breaks these dinim down into greater details. And the Braisa gives a synopsis, both concerning Hilchos Kalayim and concerning Hilchos Shabbos. That will be a great way of concluding today's daf. And now, without any further ado, Chavra, again, back to Daf Lamed Ches on the base. Reish Lakish says that even though by Kalayim, we don't care how far the side bars, the side beams are apart, even if they are more than 10 amas, you got yourself a good peya / Tzuras HaPesach. For Shabbos, it won't be valid. And the raya that Reb Chagai brought for Reish Lakish, like we explained, was from the Mishnah in Eruvin, that why did the Mishnah have to give the solution of the Shloisha Chavalim? Just give a solution of putting one rope on the top. Now, the Gemara is going to go to this topic from the following angle. Chavra, when you put the 3 ropes on the bottom of the vertical poles, are you putting those ropes on the top or on the side? On the side. You can't put it on the top. So 1 second. Maybe, you know what type of one rope will not be effective when you put it as a peya Tzuras HaPesach when the beams are more than 10 amas apart? Maybe that's only if the rope is put on the side, like telephone wires, which, by the way, halacha l'maisa is b'chlal not okay. Even if it's within 10 amas, it's not okay. That's the way we paskin. It has to dafka be on top of the poles and not high up, but on the side. But the Gemara is not going with that right now. The Gemara is going to say right now, Rabbi Yoina Amar Kamon, that Rabbi Yoshia inquired regarding the Shita of Reish Lakish. Maybe Hada Peya Ma'at Amrat, the Reish Lakish's Chumrah, in which he says, for Hilchos Shabbos, if the 2 vertical poles are beyond 10 amas, Tzuras HaPesach does not work. Is that even if the top peya, twined rope or bar that we put today, is milmaila, or Is it only minatzad? In other words, maybe, as the Gemara is going to speak out, in Tamer Mil Mailon, if Reish Lakish does not allow for the Tzuras HaPesach to work by Shabbos, if the vertical poles are more than 10 amos apart, even if the top peya is put Mil Mailon, which is the best way of making it Tzuras HaPesach, if he's machmer even there, which he is. So then, Hakol Shchein Minatzad. Then for sure, if you're not putting it on the top, for sure it will not be good. But in Tamer Minatzad, this is what Rabbi Yosha is asking, if Reish Lakish was only referring to a top bar, but that's not placed on the top mamish. It's placed above, high up, but on the side, then maybe ha mil mailon. But if you place it on the top, if you place the peya on the top, loy means Reish Lakish would not be machmer, but he'll be meko. He'll agree that even for Shabbos, it will be valid. This is the maybe. Now, hold on a second. Don't forget that we just quoted Rab Chagai's Raya from the Mishnah in Eruvin, Bavli, Tazayin Omed Beis. So let's go back to that Mishnah. In Tamar Mil Mailon, the Gemara is suggesting that perhaps we'll have a solution to this inquiry. If Reish Lakish is machmer, even if the top bar that we're calling again here in Masechtas Kalayim Yerushalmi, the peya, is put on top, then loy amar Rab Chagai klum. Then Rab Chagai actually is wrong. That's the Gemara's suggestion in bringing any type of proof from that Mishnah. Why is he wrong? You're right. We proved from the Mishnah in Eruvin that you can't use the Tzuras HaPesach because the Mishnah would have given the solution of the Tzuras HaPesach. But guys, listen to the Gemara's logic right now. What the Mishnah does allow for you to use are the 3 ropes. The 3 ropes are placed not on top. It's not shaykh to place it on the top only if you are on the top of the pin, of the bowl, of the pole. You're putting it on the side. Rab Chagai's Raya, the Gemara's logic now, was only to say that if the rope that you are placing it on the top would be similar to the way you place the 3 on the bottom, if that would have been valid, then the Mishnah would have given that as a solution. Why do you have to place 3 on the bottom? Place only 1 on the top. On the top meaning on the top side. But maybe taka, if you would place it on the top, it would be good. And why doesn't the Mishnah give that? Because the Mishnah is simply saying you have to place 3 on the bottom, place 1. The way these 3 are on the top, that because it wouldn't be good. That's the Gemara's attempted proof to say that if Rab Shlakish is so machmer, then there would be no raya from the Mishnah in Eruvin. And the Gemara says it's not true. The Gemara says it's not true. The Gemara still would have, if placing it on the top is effective, then the Mishnah should have given that as a solution. That's the Gemara's counter. That miman of shach. Or it's maybe Reish Lakish is machmer, even if you place it all the way on the top, that for Shabbos, if the side poles are more than 10 amos apart, is nishgut. And I have a rai from the Mishnah because man of shach, I mil mailon, hare mil mailon, I minatzad, hare minatzad. Again, why did the Mishnah have to give the solution of putting 3 ropes? Put it wherever it's effective, whether it's effective top side, whether it's effective top. If there would be any way that you can use only 1 rope to affect what you are attempting to affect over there in Masechtas Eruvin, which is simply creating from a carmelist into a Reshus HaYachid by making 4 mechitzas, then the Mishnah should have given the easier solution. In fact, the Mishnah doesn't give that solution. That's his raya. So therefore, Adarabba. Reish Lakish is machmer by Shabbos, even if you place it on the top. I just want to quote for people who were not here perhaps on Friday, that even though our Gemara clearly is saying that for Hilchas Shabbos, the side bars have to be 10 amos or less. In Bavli, we don't have that. Most understand that there is indeed a machlokes Bavli and Yerushalmi. However, there's a rush in the Bavli that makes a reconciliation by saying that the Bavli that allows for you to make a Tzuras HaPesach without the limitation of 10 amos or less is because the Bavli is speaking about someone that's making a Tzuras HaPesach. The words of the Rosh is in a Makayim HaYishuv. However that's defined. He doesn't use the words karmelis. He uses where people are living. Masha'enkin, as an example, the Mishnah in Eruvin that we just quoted, we're speaking about people that are traveling in middle of a bika. They're going to Catalina Islands. No one is living there. You're in a place where there's nothing there. There, the Rosh says, even the Bavli will hold that if you want to make an Eruv by using a Tzuras HaPesach, you have to have them 10 amas or less. That's the Rosh.
What was the rationale for that? Wouldn't it seem to be the other way? Like
no. I think the Amakim HaYishuv already appears to be a place that's not hefker. It's already contained. There is a containment that people feel when they go into a city. I'm speaking psychologically. Okay, weiter. In other words, okay, let's go weiter. Danny, you're good. That's a good path to go on, but let's go weiter. Says the Gemara, Rabbanon de Kisarim B'Shem Rabbi Yirmiyah, Tiftoir, Ba'asuyin Kimin Doikron. The Gemara is going to say that the whole Rab Chagai's proof is not a proof. The ganze Zach is not a proof. Because again, we're trying to establish, the Rabbanon de Kisarim, that for Shabbos you could make a Tzuras HaPesach. I don't care how far apart they are. So the question is, why didn't the Mishnah in Eruvin give you that option? So the Gemara says, listen, you have to know what the side vertical posts look like. If they are tapered poles means that even if on the bottom they have some thickness, they're so flimsy that when they go higher up, they become extremely thin. The thinner the pole is, the more flimsy it is, the harder it is to affix anything to it. In other words, the Rabbanan de Kesarim are giving you just a practical thing. When you're traveling in a caravan, I know today with technology, everyone has all these kalim. You're talking about people that are traveling. They were probably aiming to get to their destination and they got stuck on the way. And they're gathering whatever they can find out there in the wild. And the types of side poles are so schwach that they can only hold ropes in the bottom where they're stronger. The top is too skinned out. And that's why the Mishnah did not give it for an option. In other words, the Mishnah is not giving you the solution of Tzuras HaPesach on the top for practical reasons, not for halachic reasons, and therefore, don't use the Mishnah Machlal as a raya. Okay, moving on weiter. Says the Gemara, Rab Ze'era and Rab Avudma from Haifa, both in the name of Reish Lakish, weiter Reish Lakish, Benegei Tzuras HaPesach, Benegei HaShabbos, that legoiva. That there is no limitation to the height of the side posts. And Hilchos Chanukah, there is a limitation, right? Amar Rab Yudan. Whoa, you know when Reish Lakish gave you that leniency? Hadod da'at Amar. Okay, you're quoting me Reish Lakish. I'll accept it. I will accept it only le'in kalayim. As we already learned Friday, that Reish Lakish clearly differentiates the rules of Tzuras HaPesach for Shabbos versus Kalayim. For Shabbos, he's more machmer. For Kalayim, he's more lenient. He's more lenient that you can put it as high as you want. Ha'avalim Shabbos. Now, what are we talking about Shabbos, guys? I just want to make it clear. I want to go to the din of Mavui. Let's go to Hilchos Eruvin. Remember that? You have this cul-de-sac. In other words, you have an alley that's only open from one side. And the Chachamim demands for you to make some sort of heker on the entrance between the opening of the Mavui, going out into the Rishus Harabim, and the two options are a lechi or a koira. Let's speak about the koira. The koira is not the side post, but it's the cross beam. Avol in Shabbos loy tehei pei gedolim in a koira, which means very clear that the height of the koira, right? The height of the koira, clear, the Mishnah says, cannot be above 20 ames. And that's a din for Hilchos Shabbos. So it can be that if you are making a Tzuras HaPesach for Shabbos, for Eruvin, can be that those side posts will be allowed to be 20 ames. Why? Then it won't be consistent. By the way, by Menorah also we said, a Menorah has to be 20 ames, cannot be above 20 ames. Schach for the Sukkah cannot be above 20 ames. So in other words, either quoting Reish Lakish that it could be the side posts for the Tzuras HaPesach, for the Peah. Yeah, that's for Kalaim. See, again, for Kalaim, you can be lenient. Atkan Shitas Reish Lakish. However, Amar Rabbi Yosi, no, he Kalaim, he Shabbos. No. By the way, in the direction of leniency, in the direction of Kula, not only does he agree with Reish Lakish, Le'ing and Kalaim, that there's no height limitation, even but for the Tzuras HaPesach that one is making for Shabbos, you can make it as high as you want. And by the way, I'm just curious, the telephone poles, the few times, I know the halacha l'maisa, if the wires are on top, we use it. Are they 20 amas? Guys, 20 amas is 35 feet. I'm pushing. I don't think so. They're not.
Probably not.
Probably not. They are within this. Okay. Says the Gemara, hold on. The logic that we just said, Rabbi Yudan, he said something rational. He says that how can you be lenient by Shabbos when the din of a crossbeam, right, a koida, look, it's a Mishnah, you can't have it above 20 amas. So al date did Rabbi Yosi, ma ben koida, ma ben peya. Like, why is it? Why is it that for koida you are limited with the height? It cannot be above 20. Why are you being lenient by Tzuras HaPesach for Shabbos le Rabbi Yosi? So the Gemara explains that peya eina matzeles miru achachas. Very important. In other words, Tzuras HaPesach, you can never make an area of Reshus HaYachid then by having a Tzuras HaPesach on one side. Tzuras HaPesach is for you to enclose an area. So when you make a Tzuras HaPesach, you have a lot of them. You are encircling an area, mamish. The whole din of a koida is that I'll tell you more. A koida, you don't even have side. You don't even have a side. You don't even need side posts. If you remember that, you don't even need side posts. That means you are using the structure of the homes nearest the alleyway, and on top of it, you're putting it. In other words, since there's so little of it, if you won't even see it because it's above 20 amas, then you have nothing. How do you have a hecker? Masha'enken, when you have side posts, you see there's a lot more. So more is less. Since you have so much, you can afford to go even higher. That will be his logic. And now the Gemara says, Va'asya, this will be Kahahi, the Mar Rab Ze'era in the name of Rav Hamnuna, that indeed, Hapeya, Eina Matzelas, At Shetehei, Megupefes, Ma'arba Ruchaiseham. And that's the way life works. In other words, when you have many demands, you at some point couldn't get away with certain leniencies because you are fulfilling many checklists. Masha'inkin by the koida, all you're doing is a koida. Like we said, you don't even need a side post, so there you are limited with the height. Now the Gemara is going to continue to learn about Tzuras HaPesach v'Hilchos Shabbos. This is about Hilchos Shabbos. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Bar Mamo Tit Raf Liois. Tit Raf Liois is a structure of columns that support an open roof of cross beams. Right? We call this a pergola, over which vines are trailed. That's the tit raf liois. So you have these pergolas that are put in a kerem. And now what? You would think, guys, try to imagine, or Kevin can make a big painting over here of a pergola. So the crossbeam that's all the way at the edges might have been looked at like a Tzuras HaPesach, because a pergola area has 4 vertical beams on the edges of that area, on the periphery, on the outer part of the area. Then you have these horizontal beams that are going across. So l'chayda, you would argue that you have at the ends of every pergola, you have a cross beam. L'chayda, that should make the pei Tzuras HaPesach, and therefore for Shabbos you should be allowed to carry in that area without any physical wall. Says Rab Abba Bar Mamel, no. Why isn't this a Tzuras HaPesach? So here are the big cloud we're learning today. Because the intent of the person who placed the horizontal bars at the edges, the ones on the top, as well as the visual that it gives to someone looking at it, like we said, the words, is not that those crossbeams are outlining the frame. It's not outlining the frame. It's a roof. A big cloud. It's the edge of the roof. Even in the picture that Kevin is showing, which is not exactly the case of the Gemara, it's a bit more sophisticated because you have, but the outermost ones are there to support the top ones. The whole thing on top is for this pergola roof type of area. And turning to the Aflamet Testament base, and the klal is ve'ein soif tikra matzel mishum peya. In other words, the top peya, what we're calling over here, these are the words, guys. It must be an outline of the sides.
But isn't there a general rule that we learned? What do they call Pitikra, Yered V'Seiser, or whatever, or something like that? So when would you ever say that?
Very good. Danny, I love it. Pitikra Yered V'Seiser is a halacha l'Moshe Sinai that's connected to Sukkah. And now let's read. The Gemara is going to speak about Sukkah soon.
So that's not like a Shas rule, according to the way we're learning right now. That's just a Sukkah rule.
I'll tell you why. Because I'll prove it to you. Why do we have to have the words Pitikras Yored V'Soisem? Why didn't you use the word Suras HaPesach? Why do we have two different rules? And the answer is because Ein Soif Tikra Matzel Mishum Peya. Gewaldig. Anything that's part of the roof does not combine with the vertical supports. Pitikra Yored V'Soisem is not combining with the vertical supports. Peya / Suras HaPesach is you're taking the two sides on the top and you're filling the whole thing in. It has to be, again, placed to outline the sides. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Pinchas, that Asa Uvda Kome Rabbi Yirmiyah. What happened? What was the story? What was the shaila? That there was Arba'a Amudin, okay? No, a pergola, the picture that he had before is that you had 4 side posts, and the whole area on the top, like a pergola, that had many crossbeams. There came a case where there was mamish just an outline with the 4 side posts, and ba'aleim, and all you had on the top was arba'a pis taliyos, 4 beams. That's it. And you see that? They hit the letalta tachteya mishum peya.
Like an empty square? That's what we're
an empty square. In other words, less is more. Because since they built not a pergola is to put a roof. I know, guys, the roof is an open roof, but it makes a shade with sunlight. In other words, the moment they didn't fill in the whole top, all they put was 4 pistalios, adarabim. Take away the ones on the top and middle. You only have at the edges, really only 2 and 2, 4. That's why he was mounted it. Gavaldik. Less is more. And now we're going to Chasukah. I love this, guys. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Bun and Rabbanan. They asked before, or they asked of Rabbi Ze'era, right? Rabbi Ze'era in the Yerushalmi Ze'era. Peya ma'o shetatzel b'sukkah. Very simple question. But let me say, yeah. Peya matzeles b'sukkah. That's Gavaldik. Now I want to clarify what Rabbi Ze'era means. And this took a little bit of time over here. Rabbi Ze'era is not saying, Chevra, that you don't need any walls. Let's a quick chazara. What is the minimum amount of walls that you need for a sukkah then? 3, but there's a difference. I'm talking about the minute. What we're saying now is not halacha l'mais. We're going in times of the Mishnah. 2 of the walls have the minimum length of 7 tefachim. And the 3rd wall could even be of 1 tefach. Guys, I want to tell you that right now, today, we're much more machmer. Today, I know that the 3rd wall doesn't have to be a full wall, but we want for the 3rd wall to have 7 tefach. Saying the way it works. But in the Mishnah, it was in the Gemara now, 3 walls. The Rabbi Ze'era statement, Chevra, was only concerning the 3rd wall. I want to make that clear. But when he's saying that a sukkah doesn't actually need a wall, all you need to have is a Suras HaPesach. He was only speaking about the 3rd wall. Now, if you are allowing the Tzuras HaPesach, so now comes the question. The Schach why don't you make the end of the schach into what Tzuras HaPesach? Soif schach, maushi yatzil, besukkah. Line, so he says, no, that will not work. Why will it not work? Ein soif schach matzil besukkah. Ay ma bein zelozeh. So he says very clear. This is a continuation, just like we had the cloud when it came to Hilchas Shabbos that ein soif tikra matzil mishum peya. Schach is a roof. Schach is a covering. Same logic. Zen asalekach. Zen asalekach means when you're making a Tzuras HaPesach, the Tzuras HaPesach is outlining the side posts. It's not part of the roof. But v'zeh schach ein an asalekach. I'm just wondering that there should be another reason why it's not good because of tasav and also. Could be also.
I seem to remember something with sukkah about the goats. You can't have the goats piercing through the wall. I don't know how that fits in here.
Goats piercing through the wall, Danny, is an expression that is used concerning lavud. And that's we align the less than 3 tfachim that the goats cannot go through. In other words, let me say Danny's word. He just said, Danny, very good. That's it. Right? Good asik, good achis. We rely that the wall goes up. We rely that the wall goes up, but we do not rely that the wall goes down. Why not? Because of the goats. But even though the goats, once it's within 3 tfachim, lavud is okay. Why? Because we say goats have a hard time going through. Very good. Okay, let's go back.
They can't go on. As long as
they cannot. I know they could, but it's not with much more difficulty. But Danny's saying the reason why the Gemara there in Sukkah speaks about the goats, I'm 99% sure, is because there is a rule, Allah Sinai, another rule. So why don't we use that? No, why don't we allow a sukkah for you to put, let's say, 10 tfachim, even go with 10 tfachim, if you're not going to go with...
Right. It goes up, and you could do 10 tfachim up, you can't do tfachim down. If there's that big space. Why?
Because of the goats. That's it. That's what it was. Okay, let's go back. So we're having a whole discussion, by us it's a day and a little, about the Tzuras HaPesach, for Hilchas Shabbos. So it comes along Rabbi and he drops a bomb. And these are the words of Yerushalmi. He says, Kol ilin milayah. He says, all of your words, all of these title words is l'inyan maso matan. Maso matan is not selling insurance. It's not selling bathtubs. It's not selling a building. Maso matan means the shakel of Ataria. All of this is good when we're having a discussion in the Beis HaMedrash. When it comes to halacha l'maiso, asur l'hoiros. He says the whole Tzuras HaPesach I reject. Even if it meets all of the criteria that we spoke about before. Because sukkah kala.
Wait, is this even for Klayim we're talking about?
For Hilchas Shabbos, Danny. Hilchas Shabbos. Hilchas Shabbos, clear. That sukkah kala at omar asur. Asur means, see, people, that's where I got stuck yesterday. Guys, didn't we just say that it works? Yeah, Rab Ze'eda's allowance of a Tzuras HaPesach for sukkah is only for the third wall. But the 2 other walls have to be solid walls. I know solid doesn't mean solid from the bottom until the top, because we say that the good goes up. I know that. It's bottom, everything is bekitza. For sukkah, where you allow Tzuras HaPesach, you don't allow Tzuras HaPesach. You're not for the third wall that only has to be 1 tefach. Shabbos hachamura lekolchchen, that you cannot use Tzuras HaPesach. And the Gemara right away says that not everyone agreed with it. By the way, if that would be the case, then most of people's Eruvin are not valid. Rabbi Bun Bar Chia asked in front of Rab Ze'eda, Man Tana Peya Matzelas. Now, Danny, we're going now to Kalayim, and this is going back for people just to refresh the memories. We are referring to the Braisa that we learned on the Flamet Ches Amud Beis. Was it not Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri? Okay. And 1 second. In other words, when it comes to Kalayim, Danny, no one argues with him. Clear that Tzuras HaPesach works for Kalayim. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, the same Tana, in the Braisa on Daf Lamed Ches Amud Beis, says clearly that it's also valid for Shabbos. That's it. So therefore, the Gemara is rejecting Rabbi Bohu. Amalei, so it says, Rab Ze'eda, that I'll defend Rabbi Bohu, that you should know you're right. We have a Braisa on Daf Lamed Ches Amud Beis. We have Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. He makes a correlation, Kalayim and Shabbos. Guys, for Kalayim, everyone agrees with it. So L'chayda is Kalayim and Shabbos. Now we're gonna interchange a hey with a ches, as is following the rules of the Sefer Yetzirah, right? The letters that come from the same place are interchangeable. It hey, that's why many people here, when it comes to a ches, they only pronounce it with the hey, right? Simcha. It hey kana. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri was rejected. So the Gemara is basically concluding, like really backing up Rabbi, that for Shabbos, Lubavitches, you don't use an Eruv, even though that's a misstatement, but let's say in the ignorance, people make that statement. Okay. Just for the record, that the Eruvin is 100% good and valid.
But in the Gan Yisrael camps, they make sure that the Tzuras HaPesach is less than 10 Amos.
Because Gan Yisrael camps, based on the Rosh, Danny, are out there. Most of the camps, you're not in a Makam Yishuv. Gam Gan Yisrael Montreal that I went to one time, never again, is mamish middle of nowhere, and that's exactly what the Rosh is saying. And just for the record, that what the Rebbe wanted from Eruvin is that it should follow the highest level of halachic standard. That's what the Rebbe wanted. L'kula alma. So exactly. So when you're making a Tzuras HaPesach, you have such a shita that says that you're clear, even though it's not a machlokes Yerushalmi. Because if it's a machlokes Yerushalmi and Babli, you can say, according to most other Rishonim, that lebavli, halachic and Babli, you can make it as far as you want. No, the Rosh says everyone agrees that in the outside there you have to have the limitation of 10. Guys, let's make a quick sequence. We have punkt enough time. Let's put Tzuras HaPesach aside. Let's just go back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah, guys, recapping. We're speaking about the din, the one halacha, that even though kilayim, asur b'hana, and you have to have from a vineyard 4 amas. If there is a wall, if there is a halachic wall, you can plant the vines up until the wall from one side, and even if the wall is as skinny as who knows what, it's a tefach skinny, you can plant anything else on the other side of the wall. And the Mishnah was addressing halachic mechitzas, because of course, if you have a clear, solid, gashmi zdika mechitza, clear, and then there is a halachic mechitza. Halachic mechitza means is that there are breaches in the wall. And the Brais is going to be more detailed in reviewing to whoever learned and forgot, where you didn't learn yet, we'll begin to the beginning. Says the Brais, this is the Brais. And we are making a contrast between Kalayim and Shabbos. Generally, when it comes to the laws of partitions. In Kalayim, step number 1, this is beautiful. Kol hapachas mishloisham, even if there are openings in the wall is not solid. If the breaches that go from the top until the bottom are less than 3 tvachim, that's lavut kisasum. And therefore, what, my friends, not only am I allowed to plant vineyard from one side and barley from the other side of the solid part of the wall, I can even do that, David, where there is a breach. Mamish. Now, we're not allowing for it to mix, but it can go touching. Why? Maybe you're not touching. Maybe you have to leave the width of the wall. So if the wall is a finger breadth, you have to leave the finger breadth. If the wall is a tefach, you have to leave a tefach. I think that's an interesting question. Because love it. Now, the next step is mishloisha va'adar ba. And I want to remind everyone, and to make it clear, that this mishloisha va'adar ba is only for kalayim. What do I mean by kalayim? That by kalayim, the width of a wall, for you to say, oh, there's a wall, I can plant on one side vines and on the other side anything else, that's only if the solid wall has at least 4 tfachim. We spoke this out when we learned the Mishnah, even though the Mishnah never mentioned that here. Now you're having it clearly. Now, if mishloisha va'ad arba means you don't have arba, Danny, that means you have a little piece of wall, which is less than 4 tfachim. You have a breach less than 4 tfachim, but more than 3. Means you don't have lavut. You don't have lavut. So you have walls and breaches that are in between. If the breaches are less than 3, then you have a wall. If the breaches are 3 until 4, we're emphasizing 4, not because of the breach, but because of the solid wall. The solid part of the wall is also less than 4, which is a problem. Because that solid wall that's less than 4 is in itself not a wall. So then it's not, there's still a place to be matir, which will be, it depends. We consider it solid, not because of love, because of the rule that oimed rabal aparos. So let's say there is a board, guys, that's 3.5 tvachim. There is a breach, 3.1 tvachim, or even 3 tvachim. A solid 3.5 A breach, 3. So even though that's the chiddush, you don't have any physical solid wall of 4 tfachim, since on that side, I think it's on that side, you have oimed rabba ala parutz, we halachically combine the wall, and now mutter means even opposite the breaches, you can plant vines and the other product. However, ve'im haparutz rabba ala oimed. So then that's the beauty. You know what usher means? Usher means not only opposite the breach, even opposite the solid. Why? Because it's not 4 tfachim. The next level now is ma'ar b'bad eser. Guys, this is important. And which is what, see, ma'ar b'bad eser would mean, as we'll see, that even if parutz meruba al ha'oimet, so you do not combine the wall, but the solid 4 tfachim wall is in itself a wall for that area only. Let's read it inside. So then we combine the whole wall, not because of love, but because of the rule of oimid meruba ala parutz, and therefore mutter means not only opposite the solid, even opposite the breach. The parutz meruba ala oimid taka, you cannot combine the wall, but still the boards, the solids are between 4 and 10. Again, we don't need more than 4. The 10, guys, is for the breach. That's the 10. Then still keneged ha'oimid mutter, keneged ha'parutz asur. Guys, this whole din of 4 is not shaykh to Hilchos Shabbos. That will be the nekuda of the Brais. Now, yoiser me'eser means both. You have a piece of wall that's 11 amos, but then you have a breach of 11 amos. What the Brais is speaking about, both the solid and the breach. Now, once it's more than eser, even if the sum total is oimed rab ala parutz. In other words, you have a wall on a side that's 50 yards or whatever shear you want to, a mile long, and you have a solid of 11 amas, but then you have a breach of 10 and a half amas, a solid of 11 amas, a breach of 10 and a half amas. So even if the sum total, like the example I just gave, is only keneged ha'oimid mutter. Again, keneged ha'oimid mutter, because this is not worse than the 4 tfachim. Keneged ha'parutz asur gevaldik. Now, in contrast, says the Braisa, let's see how far we can get. Le'inyan Shabbos, all the rules are the same aside of one rule. By Shabbos, there's no need. There is no halacha of the 4 tfachim. 4 tfachim is only to make a solid wall to be allowed to be matir kalayim on one side and something on the other side. First of all, let's go milmata lamayla. Kol hapachas mishleisha kisasim. So that's done. You can carry noise if you have an area that's encircled by 4 walls, but there are breaches in the wall. As long as the breaches are less than 3 tfachim, and guys, let me say these words: even if parutz meruba al ha'oimet, physically, that means that the solid part is like many people have fences around the pool. It's very skinny. The physical is skinny. The space in between them is a lot more than the width. That's good. Why? Because of love. No, it's by love. That's the chiddush of love. By love, I don't care if physically it's part of one of our life. It makes no difference. There's no din of 4. It's always going to be the same thing. You have to know one rule. What's the one rule? Mutter means you can carry in the entire area. Beautiful. In the entire area. If you have a breach in the wall for Shabbos, that's more than 10, like we had for Kalayim, nevertheless, all right, asur means you may not carry in the entire area. Why not? Because you don't have a vant. You don't have a wall. The wall is parutz. The wall is breached. I think we should stop over here, almost to the bottom of the Amit. Got one to be continued. That's a great sequence.